Glad you could join us. We're happy to have you. We like to begin each meeting with a moment of silence, and we would invite you to join us if you'd like to. Thank you. First is the Pledge of Allegiance and School Highlight by Kiwi Elementary. Mr. Holliday.
I brought with me our beekeepers from our school. They're actually going to present tonight, so they'll say the pledge and never present, but I think y'all want to come on and say the pledge.
Come up and turn and face the camera for us. Whenever you're ready.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Christy Moore is our gate and technology teacher. She's also our master beekeeper, our queen bee. We'll call her the queen bee. Can we do that?
Yeah.
So I brought my beekeepers with me tonight to share a little bit about what we're doing, what we've learned in this big process of this thing called beekeeping. So girls, go over to you.
Are you in alphabetical order? Look at me. Smile.
Hi, we are the Kiwi Elementary Bee Club. We are all about bees and making sure they are safely protected. We even went out to see the beehive. Oh, we love bees and we hope you will start to or continue to take care of bees. We think bees are beautiful.
Bees are important. Bees are our natural resource. Bees pollinate and provide honey for us. Without bees, we would not survive. When bees pollinate, they give us fruit, vegetables, and nuts. Also, bees help plants grow, which feeds cattle and livestock, which feeds us. This is why we need to help bees. Beekeeping at Kiwi Elementary.
Its observation hive is a hive that lets you see what they're doing from the inside. Right now in our observation hive, we're looking for pests. A box hive is a beehive that doesn't allow you to see what they're doing from the inside, unless you take the top off.
We did some observations last spring we did some bee observations around the box hive. One observation we noticed is that the honey in the frames can make the frames very heavy to lift. Also, pollen is a very interesting and beautiful nature's resource because it comes in all different colors such as brown, green, yellow, orange, and orange with a hint of pink. Door to fall, bees, if you think about it, aren't that scary as long as you don't offend them. Otherwise, that is why they'd sting you. Last, the reason we use smoke on bees is to calm them down.
We took we observed the box hive last spring, and we looked for pests and mites, which I was and we got to feel the honeycombs and how and they were heavy. At first we were scared, but we went after a while.
And we have just a short video to kind of show you our hive at that. Busy doing that thing.
Here are some interesting facts about bees. Bees have 3 million hairs covering their entire body, including their eyes. Worker bees only live up to 6 weeks in their hive. Well, in summer. And bees' brains are only about the size of sesame seeds, but they're very, very good at memorizing stuff. They have good memory. And a bee can fly up to 6 miles to find food, like pollen and nectar, in one time. And that is all my bee facts I have.
So the girls put this together for you. They're the ones that research, they're the ones that come to meetings, they're the ones that have been able to go out and actually do the hive inspection and to be able to really truly see what it means to be a beekeeper. So our next steps, what we're hoping to continue is that we love our hive. We have 2 different kinds. We have one that's out back, outside a traditional box, and then we have an observation hive where we can actually see what's happening. It's a great tool for the children to learn the different types of bees, what the job of the bees are. Unfortunately, though, our box that sits out back, we have a friendly bear cub in the neighborhood who also enjoyed our hive box out back, and at the end of last school year, it did knock over our hive and destroy some of our frames. We were able to find the queen and assemble it back. However, I don't think the bees were too happy with that situation, so not long after that, they decided to swarm and take off. So we're hoping by the time we get our box hive back outside at the beginning of spring, we're going to install an electric fence. We've already gotten a couple of donations from community members who have donated a power pack. We've also got a Duke Endowment grant that's helping us fund it. So we're hoping to electrify it and protect our fence, our hive a little better. We're also hoping that our observation hive inside right now is doing really well with the amount of honey that it has created. So we're hoping too that this spring, we don't want to rob them right now because they'll need it for the winter, but we're hoping maybe this spring, if it keeps producing well, we'll be able to extract honey out of it and to be able to enjoy the fruits of our labor. But the girls have done a wonderful job with, they monitor the hive inside, they look for pests, there's a little tray that we pull out and we look for pests. We monitor kind of the number of bees we see in there, we look for cat brood to make sure that the queen is continuing to lay. And every time these girls would get together, they still have a million more questions, curiosity, just wondering about bees and why they do what they do. But they're definitely on the right track to taking care of nature and preserving our much needed bees.
Very good.
Wait 1 second, girls. We have a little certificate of recognition for you because we appreciate what you're doing. And we're so excited that you're learning and that you're protecting the bees in the Kiwi area. So we have certificates for Hannah. For Annie. Maddie. Melody. And Ray.
thank you, Mr. Holliday, and girls, very good job. Very, very informative and interesting. Next is celebrating our successes, Dr. Thorson.
Thank you, and I'm going to share two things. Mr. Herring and Ms. McCormick will be excited about the first, but I am very excited to report that West Oak won their football game Friday night. It's been a long time coming, but they looked very sharp Friday. I got to go down to Dixie, and even though there were a couple of lightning delays, they played very well. So we were excited for that, and just in our discussions today, we really feel like they've got several more chances this year to get even a couple more W's, and we'd be excited about that. The other is just want to remind you and other folks about our events coming up next week with our, September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and we've got 3 events during the week. I believe Monday at 6 o'clock is at Walhalla High, Tuesday at 6 is Seneca, and then Thursday at 6 is West Oak Middle School. The other two, Walhalla High and Seneca High, West Oak Middle School. And those are events just for families. We wanted students and parents alike, as well as community members, to be able to attend these, and just events to celebrate life, essentially, and to help individuals realize that mental health is not, it shouldn't be stigmatized, and that there are many people who struggle with it, and we want to make people aware of the resources out there to help them. And then those events will culminate on Saturday in a Hike for Hope. We're going to be at the Blue Ridge Electric Cooperative campus, right at the intersection of 123 and Highway 11, and have things for kids to do. There'll be food there, and we're going to hike around their little nature trail on their campus, so it's going to be a great event, and I would love everyone to attend and help us bring awareness to this important topic.
Thank you, Dr. Thorson. Next is the approval of tonight's agenda. Anyone notice any errors or anything that needs to be corrected? And without objection, we will approve the September 16th regular board meeting agenda. The agenda is approved. Public comment. Ms. Gibson, do we have no one to sign up? Okay. Next, approval of minutes from our August 19th work session, regular meeting. Any corrections? No one noticed errors? Without objection, we will approve the August 19th, 2019 work session regular meeting minutes. They're approved. Discussion and possible action on the 2021 school calendar. Dr. Thorson, you want to start off, or Mr. Hanby?
I'll start off because Mr. Mangum put the microphone in front of me, so I'll start off, but it may be a tag team event. As we discussed last week, the State Board of Education has given us permission to start middle and high schools next year 1 week early. So instead of August 17th, we have the flexibility to start school on the 10th for our middle schools and high schools only. We do not have permission to start elementary schools. The survey that we sent out to staff members and then to parents indicated that we had at least 70% of individuals who were, I don't want to misrepresent what it said, not necessarily excited about it, but willing to give it a chance with 2 different start dates for secondary and elementary. I'm not going to pretend it's the best situation out there, because it's not. I think we were very clear last week in speaking that the best scenario is that the state legislature get out of the school calendar business altogether and let you as an elected body in our county set the school calendar for all students in Oconee County. That's what we want. It's not the reality that we have right now. So I've given you a memo. We made, I guess, some last minute decisions today, just putting this together. But as far as impact to calendars, would create some additional work in this office with our payroll system, and then PowerSchool is our student database. And there would be some additional work in this office, but it would largely be in the setup, which would be during the summer. It would not be ongoing during the school year. Once these things are set up, it would not lead to additional monthly work. It would just be some additional time, in the summer months. Different start dates. Along with the negatives, it does create a couple of things that we see as a positive. I think Ms. Simmons would be happy to tell you that week before school started, when teachers were back, was nothing short of chaos for her department, because they were just pulled in so many different directions, going to this meeting and this training, and having 2 weeks to do that would actually make things probably a little more doable for her department. And technology, Mr. Shepard has said the same thing. If he had a couple of weeks to work on the software programs and distributing computers and things like that, it would make it easier for them. So pros and cons for programmatic impact. We discussed physical impact. We do think that there will be a moderate cost to having 2 different calendars, and that's primarily bus drivers. We would have some bus drivers that would work an additional 5 days. Because now the 2 calendars would be spread out over 185 days as opposed to 180. We don't expect there to be certainly other major expenses. There may be some minor things that could crop up, so I just want everyone to be aware that something else could come up, but nothing that we can anticipate at this time. So our recommendation at this time would be to adopt the earlier start date for our middle and high schools, and a week later have the elementary school start on August 17th, which is what the legislature calls for right now. But we would also, as you mentioned last week, Mr. Herring mentioned me working with the other superintendents, and I certainly plan to email them. If you approve this recommendation tonight, then I would email them hopefully prior to Thursday. I have a superintendent's meeting in Columbia on Thursday, and I would like to email them tomorrow or Wednesday, just to let them know what your decision is and see if we could generate some support from other parts of the state for asking the legislature to take themselves out of the school calendar business. But we also are open to, I'm not especially optimistic about this option, but I would be happy to contact the state board again, bring the results of our parent survey to them, and say that we feel like there is an academic reason to keep all of our schools on the same calendar. And while they've approved it for middle and high schools, we think that for continuity and just for family unity that there's a good case to be made for all of our schools being able to do that. So that's kind of where we are, and we're happy to answer any questions. And
Mike, I just have a comment.
yes, sir.
You just gave another reason for us to have them starting at the same time the week earlier. And that is, even though it's not going to cost a lot of money, it's going to cost some money.
It is.
And if you think about 80 districts across the state doing that, that little bit of money amounts to a lot of money. So why does the legislature, why in the world would the legislature want to say to the district, it's okay to do that, go ahead and spend that extra money. We don't need it anywhere else. This doesn't make sense to me.
And, I think if we get enough public support, contacting the legislators, we may get that changed. Ideally, it would be good if they did that this session, and we could go back real quickly and amend our calendar for next year.
That would be nice.
Well, it is on the agenda for discussing possible action. So is there a motion on the school calendar for 2021?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the recommendation of administration to accept their recommendation on the calendar for 2021.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second to approve the administration's recommendation for the 2021 school calendar. Discussion, questions?
Question, our bus drivers, we're already down, how many bus drivers?
12 district-wide.
12. Okay, so now we're going to, never mind.
Yeah, it'll help on that end.
It'll help.
It'll help at the front end and the back end. In between, when everything's the same, it will not. For the
Okay.
175 days, they run the same schedule. It
The,
would not help us.
You have a survey that has 2,000, roughly 2,100 respondents. How many of those, what did you anticipate the total response being? How many, 100%? In other words, how many families do we have? Do you have an idea of how many actual families we have in?
We said that the number, I talked to Stephanie, would, if, between families and, like, I get it from both ends as a parent and as an employee.
Right.
So trying to take those out. I sent out on the messenger call 9,800 messages or so, but we were guessing 8,300 would be the, so we're looking at 20, low 20%, low 20 something.
Okay. What I'm getting at is, I have a concern with a population that, one, does not have internet access, a population that if they have older children that are in the secondary side, they may be babysitting their younger siblings for that week, and they won't be going to school. And I spoke to some folks, and they said there's a good chance that that's probably going to be true. That there's a population that, because they are so family-oriented, the older kids are going to babysit the younger ones and not go to school. And I'm concerned about that. I mean, we've been doing this, since 2007, this current schedule. I don't want to jeopardize the children for something that will give. I was going to also ask you, what is the Tri-County Tech? The kids that are going to go to Tri-County Tech, how many kids are we talking about?
So we have 104 that are enrolled in dual credit this semester. The number that have signed up so far for second semester is, I think, in the 60, 64.
It goes up. It'll be,
But
it's usually around 90.
So it'll be helping those individuals, but there's only 100 and some.
That's correct. Yes.
No more than 200 students out of
Sure.
our
That-
entire,
yeah, I don't-
half of our population on the second.
But it would also help anybody who has to take an exam and they get to take it before Christmas as well. So we just, in our minds, it would just be the TCTC.
This is definitely a high school issue. There's no question.
Yeah.
One of our comments this morning, and well, I'm just going to be honest and open about it.
Please.
If we made a recommendation to just do the August 17th start date, it's just status quo, and I guess what would the motivation be for our legislators to even think it's a concern? I really think that at the high school level, there are 3 academic reasons for starting early enough so that the first semester can be completed before Christmas. I believe strongly that that's the case, and if we, we've floated the year-round, the modified calendar, now we're floating a different option. If we continue to just talk about it and not do anything, then I don't know that it's going to be harder to convince the legislature that we really think those are legitimate reasons.
I guess my question is, by us doing that, is it going to make a difference down in Columbia? They're going to turn around and say, well, they did what we told them to do. I mean, it kind of disgusts me that that we even have to have controls placed on us that dictates when we can start first day of school.
We share that.
I know, we all,
Agree with
that's obvious. But I don't know, again, there is a possible population that may not be going the first week because they're going to be taking care of their children in elementary school.
I have had a conversation with the YMCA, and the YMCA is willing to partner with us to provide care for elementary school students that week that middle and high school students would be starting before then.
Okay, how's that going to work out? I mean,
Well, I certainly don't have all the
you
details.
don't have all the details?
I just called and spoke to the director of their after-school care program as well as the CEO, Crystal Ross, and they both indicated that they are willing to work through whatever we need to work through so that they could assist us with that. Of course, you know, like I said, we don't have the details. They employ a lot of college students in the summer, so we would have to work with them on, you know, how they're going to get the employees to do it. How many students are they going to need to keep, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, we don't know that
but
either.
they're committed to work with us to help offer that to elementary school students who do need care that week from someone other than an older sibling.
But Dr. Thorson, to your point, if we sit here again and do nothing, legislature's gonna just rock on like they normally would do and make little or no effort to make a change. If they see that this district, maybe we can encourage another district and another, and if several begin to make the move, they'll say, okay, maybe we do need to back off and turn it over to the district.
And there are other school boards and school districts who have made this case. I've seen, I'm not sure which district it is in the Rock Hill area, but there was a district there that put some material out. Pickens County's board, if I'm not mistaken, they've actually voted and said they want to start earlier, and they've asked their legislature to be willing to give them leniency on the calendar as well. So we just need to generate a few more school boards and school districts support, and then maybe we'll get enough momentum to see it change.
I think everyone around this table agrees it's not a perfect solution by any means, you know.
Certainly not.
It's a solution. Hopefully it will be short-lived, and we'll have the authority to set our date ourselves. Any other discussions, questions, comments? Okay, the motion is to approve the 2021 school calendar as presented by the administration. Those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is passed 3-2. Next on the agenda is donation of property, robotics team 343.
Yes, and
you
I'll
handle
take that one as well. I got an email from one of the robotics team sponsors, and really the important information in this is that over the years that the robotics team operated out of the Hamilton Career Center, we were the fiscal agent for that team. Any donation that came to the team would be deposited in the school district bank account, and then their expenses would be paid from that account as well. And over the course of that history, 2 trailers were purchased. One's an enclosed trailer and one is an open trailer. And those are technically school district property because, like I said, they were purchased with money from a school district account. But the intent of those purchases, the intent was for robotics and for the students involved in robotics. A little over a year ago, the robotics team fiscal agent changed from being the school district to Tri-County Tech. And the robotics team is wanting to insure those 2 trailers. So to do that, the title needs to reflect, I'm not sure if it's going to be Team 343 or Tri-County Tech, but it doesn't need to be School District of Oconee County anymore. But our procurement code calls for anytime property is dispersed outside of the code, it needs approval from the board. So we're just asking that those 2 trailers be taken off of our school district inventory and donated to the robotics team officially so that they can get them insured.
Any questions on that? Comments? Is there a motion to approve the donation of the 2 trailers to Robotics Team 343/Tri-County Tech?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we donate the 2 trailers to Robotics Team 343.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Discussion? Those in favor? Unanimous. Next, we have first reading approval of some policies that were discussed last week. First is policy EEAE Bus Safety Program. Mr. Hanvey, you want to do a brief
I will.
review of that?
This policy basically combines an old policy and an administrative rule. I did call on Tuesday. I spoke to the folks in Columbia about our question where it changed out, where it marked through all employees subject to CDL requirements and replaced that with transportation staff. And the opinion from the legal department at the School Boards Association is that that includes anybody in the district who has a CDL and drives a bus or whatever. It's the way we want it to be. It maintains our coaches and our teachers who drive for field trip. So it, by their definition, the transportation staff includes anybody with a CDL and drives for the district, whether they're paid or not. So that was the one question we had to clear up that was confusing, and they understood why it was confusing, so they figured they would help out a lot of people by sending out something. But the rest of it is catching up mainly with legal references. It had not been updated since 2010. So nothing changed with ours. We still do the same type testing, pre-testing, the physicals every 2 years, unless you meet certain qualifications. Have to have it every year, pass all the tests. If you get more than 4 points in the calendar year, then your CDL is suspended and you can't drive for us until you get that worked out, and so forth. So it pretty much cleans that up and puts everything together under one neat policy.
Any questions? I got a motion to approve on first reading policy EEAE Bus Safety Program.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion on the first reading to approve policy EEAE Bus Safety Program.
Second.
Motion and second to approve on first reading. Discussion? Those in favor? Unanimous. Next is policy IHBF Medical Homebound Instruction. Ms. Simmons.
Yes, sir. This policy is basically established our district structure on how we are providing medical homebound instruction to our students. The changes that you'll see are the conditions that must exist with the student to be able to receive this type of instruction. On the second bullet, it was added to also include physician's assistant or properly authorized advanced practice registered nurse. And then additional bullet on 3, that the homebound instruction must be approved by the superintendent or designee. And also bullet 4 was not included in this new policy. And the only other additions were at the very bottom, where we have some legal references that have been removed. That was number 1 and 4, and then a new, that was number 2 section added.
Any questions, Ms. Simmons? Since the next one is also instruction, let's go ahead and do that. Policy IKA-R, Grading Assessment Systems, and we'll vote on them together.
Okay, yes, sir. At the beginning in the grading scales, we updated that to identify the academic and related arts grading scales in grades K all the way through 8. At the bottom starts our new state uniform grading scale for grades 9 through 12 with the updated conversions that goes on to page 2 and at the top of page 3. Then below that is the conversion process. It talks about the type of conversion process that we need to use for courses that were given in 2015-16, and then below that, 2016-17. And then also if there are grades that are not an actual below the 50th percentile, it talks at the bottom of page 3 on how you would assign those grades. On page 4, we continue to talk about how a district will review a student's transcript with providing more additional evidence. and what those types of evidence could be in reviewing. This also goes along with international students as opposed to also students that transfer into our district. Also, end of course testing just is included there as far as any courses that have an EOC, that will be 20% weighting for the student's final grade. Then we move into honors courses, talks about the different assigned weighting for courses that are to be honors, has to follow those particular bullets when you're considering the extension of curriculum, and that it all needs to be associated back to the profile of the South Carolina graduate. Also down into transfer of courses, students that are transferring from schools that are non-accredited, again, providing evidence of work for those courses. If they are honors level at the top of page 5, we will be using the South Carolina Honors Framework criteria to evaluate the evidence for those types of courses. Then we took what was in our PASS policy related to students transferring from a home school or a non-accredited private school. We just included that as part of the transfer courses section of this policy. And then we took out the very bottom part of that paragraph and moved it to provide the documentation of coursework to reviewed by the superintendent or his or her designee to provide consistency in how we're reviewing those transcripts. Then there was a section included on our advanced learning opportunities and what makes those, what's the criteria that needs to be applied to those. And then down in dual enrollment or dual credit, it talks about what those courses are and that if a student transfers in, the weighting that's applied needs to be in regards to that state's regulations. We cannot change that weighting just because they are coming to us in South Carolina. Then on page 6, we have our grade point averages, and it includes the formula that we will use to calculate that. Not much change in course withdrawals, just down in that third paragraph. We added in students who withdraw with administrative approval will be given a WP. And then on the last page of the policy, we included some new information on auditing a course, making sure a student will not receive a grade for that course, nor will it be included in the calculation of the GPA. And then the very bottom with floor grades is the final section of the policy where we set the intent of the floor grades to encourage students to continue to work hard to master the course content. With this in mind, high school and middle school students in credit-bearing courses will not receive a grade of less than 50% for the first half of a course, and then all other students in middle school, including elementary school students, will not receive less than 50% for the entire course.
Thank you. Any questions, Ms. Simmons? Comments? If I could, let's do those two together. Policy IHBF, medical homebound instruction, and policy IKA-R, grading assessment systems, on first reading.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve policy IHBF, medical homebound instruction, and policy IKA-R, grading assessment systems, on the first reading.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve on first reading. Discussion? Those in favor? It's unanimous. And the last one is policy KLGA, school resource officers. Mr. Handy.
Yes, just a few minor changes in here. One thing we're trying to do with our resource officers and our school administrators is making sure that we let our administrators handle what our administrators are supposed to handle, and we don't get our resource officers involved until it's time for our resource officers to get involved. And so this helps clear some of those things up. It defines, level 3 is definitely a time. There can be other times when they can be involved if the administration, through questioning, a student or an adult feels like that there may be some kind of criminal act that is taking place, whether it be with a phone or whatever, then they are able to get them involved in. But they don't need to be sitting in on every conversation and every investigation and that. They've got to stay on the outside until we feel like there's a reason to bring them in. So that they help clearly define that. They also tweaked the disturbing schools a little bit. That's a separate law, but they included a little bit of that language in here. Before, when a student was disruptive in that, sometimes we would charge them with disturbing schools as a way to help make sure they got the help they needed and where they were supposed to be. That's no longer the case. Very rare are the instances that you can charge a student with disturbing schools. It typically has to be somebody from the outside coming in. So it talks a little bit about that and clearing that up. And then it does add the line that they are supposed to assist with the school training for crisis management and crisis situations. Our schools have to do 2 Code Reds now. They do 1 on their own, which they'll do sometime toward the very beginning of school, and then they do 1 where we, Ms. Hughes and the Sheriff's Department and SROs go to the school and typically stage an event to see how they react. I told you we video it. There's a lot of sit-down conversation and analysis that goes into it to make sure we're as prepared as we can be. But they are by policy now required to participate in that, although ours have been doing that anyway. And then they do reference the school disturbances by non-students and the penalty or the Disturbing Schools Act in the legal references. So not a tremendous difference from what we currently have, just a few little minor details.
Any questions of Mr. Hamby? Is there a motion to approve policy KLGA, school resource officers, on first reading?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve policy KLGA, school resource officers, on first reading.
I'll second that.
Motion is second to approve policy KLGA, school resource officers. Discussion? All in favor? And it is unanimous. Last on the agenda is approval of Code Learning Center property transfer of ownership. Mr. Hamby.
Yes. As we discussed last week, currently the Blue Ridge Community Center group operates the back half of adult ed, the original Blue Ridge High School building and Code Elementary, and we have met with them on numerous occasions. You guys have already graciously given them that, but as we're progressing through with the new Hamilton Career Center opening up and then moving out of the newer part at Code from our adult ed and it moving to the current Career Center, they have asked that you all approve for them to take occupancy of that part of the building as well. They are working on some tenant agreements to things. They understand that there's going to be, costs. They're paying the power bill and those things now on part of the building. They understand that the costs are going to go up, and they understand that things like roofs have to be replaced every 20 years, and that one's on year 12 or so. So we've had a lot of conversation with that. They've got a lot of information from Mr. Alexander, but what I would ask that you guys do is give either myself or Dr. Thorson or both of us the right to be able to sign, because it's going to take a while to do the paperwork if you approve this transaction. But we wanted to kind of move it forward so they could start making plans. They could start reaching out to people who want to be tenants and say, come August, at the latest mid-August, we'll have spots available. And in the letter they ask about if there's older equipment we're not using or equipment they're not going to take with us, rather than hauling it somewhere else or doing something with it, that if they could use it, we'd allow them to keep it there, and even look at some of our surplus items that we have at the current alternative school, the Old Hall Middle on the second floor. So we'd like to begin that process so they can kind of plan what they're going to need down the road to outfit that building. So we also talked about putting in a reverter clause back in it. That way, if after several years they make the determination that for whatever reason they're not able to upkeep, maintain, and take care of the building the way they need to and use it for what they want to, that it would come back to the school district and it would be our responsibility to dispose of and sell the land and try to recoup what we could from that.
Any questions, Mr. Henry?
My question is, after how many years, several, do we have,
We would just put, it would, until they could no longer use it. We wouldn't put a time limit on it for them. It would just be if down the road. So it could, hopefully it'll go on as long as we're here and going. But if say in 7 years or whatever, they just found out it wasn't feasible enough and they had $1 million in stuff they need to get fixed and they just couldn't get it, then it would revert back. So there's not a per se time frame. It's basically when they realize they can't use it anymore and keep it up.
When the school district donates property to a nonprofit, if that nonprofit ever ceased to exist, because the nonprofit has to file with the State Department, the Secretary of State every year and that kind of thing. We have had, just in the last few years, we had property that had been donated years ago to a nonprofit organization, and that organization just didn't exist anymore. So then, in that case, the property did not come back to the school district. But I feel strongly that it should, so that we can raise buildings and redevelop property in a positive way, because I do feel like old, neglected school buildings are a blight for a community, and we need to take care of them and not let that happen in the future. So it may never come back to the school district. As long as that organization is active in using the building, it would never come back to the school district. It's just a safeguard that if something happened where the building wasn't being used positively, that it would be our responsibility to raise the building and then sell the property for redevelopment, or I guess a future superintendent and a future school board can make that decision.
We hope we never get it back, but I think Buddy mentioned it last week. What you don't want to do is wind up without that, it could be sold to an individual, and then you have an eyesore in the community like Fairplay Elementary, the former Fairplay Elementary, and that's all we're trying to prevent. We do not want the building back.
Right.
Any other questions or discussion? Can I get a motion to approve the administration proceeding with transferring ownership of the property and certain, what would you call the contents, I guess?
Unused equipment.
Unused
Furniture and equipment, yeah.
Of the former Code Learning Center to the Blue Ridge Community Center.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the Code Learning Center property transfer of ownership and used equipment. First reading?
No,
this
this is it. Only one on this.
We'll second that.
Motion second to approve the transfer of the Code Learning Center property and specified equipment and contents, and the administration will handle the details. Discussion? All in favor? And it is unanimous. And that concludes the open portion session of our meeting. Again, we appreciate you being here. We do have an executive session for personnel items, employment, recommendations and changes. And without objection, we will proceed into executive session. And we shall return to take any action after the executive session. And thank you for being here.